Honestly, there are some big differences between online cash games and live cash games, and today I want to give you some important truths about live cash. Let's get into it. Good morning, how are we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka Split Suit. I'm a poker coach, poker author, and I've been playing poker for 18 years. And I've not only played live poker that entire 18 years, but I've also put in over 1 million hands online, which puts me in a unique position to compare and talk about both online cash games and live cash games. And today we're going to talk about 6 truths that every single live poker player really needs to understand. Whether you're just getting into live cash, you've been playing live cash for a while, make sure you understand these things. Alright, let's get started. Truth number 1, live poker is incredibly slow. So online, you're typically going to play somewhere between 60 to 75 hands per hour, per table, which means that if you're multi-tabling, you can be seeing hundreds of hands per hour. If you're playing a fast fold variant, you can also be playing somewhere between 200 to 250 hands per hour. That's a lot more than live, where you're seeing somewhere between 20 to 30 hands per hour. And of course, you can't multi-table when you're playing live either, so it's very slow when it comes to volume. Which means if you want to be successful playing live, you really need 2 different superpowers. Number 1 is the ability to discern good information from a very small sample size, since even if you play with someone for a couple of hours, you're not seeing that many hands against them. And then number 2 is you really need to be able to deal with being bored well. And actually, this is an issue that I had as well when I started playing a tremendous amount online and then would go back to play live sessions. I was so incredibly bored that I would just start making really spewy plays because I was so bored and just not used to the pace of live poker. So you're gonna have to get used to that. And for some people, that's gonna be welcome because they like the extra time, they like the fact that it's not so fast. Totally understand, to each their own, but by the same token, keep this in mind that this can definitely be something to work through if you're coming from an online environment where you're used to seeing tons of volume per hour, just seeing not so many hands playing live. Truth number 2 is that you should be tighter than you think you should. A lot of live games that I've come across simply don't play that deep. Oftentimes the minimum buy-ins are somewhere between 100 to 200 big blinds, and a lot of players will buy in for half that, and obviously that's going to make the gameplay a lot more shallow. So that doesn't allow you as much opportunity to correctly open up your ranges pre-flop, and a lot of players, simply because there are so few hands per hour, start getting very bored very quickly, and as such start playing way too many hands pre-flop, and thinking, oh, I can just get involved in this multi-way pot, or I can just limp here, or I can just limp a bunch of hands here, and honestly creates a lot of problems for their win rate. And the issue is that this is kind of a silent killer, especially in kind of these limps or small call situations, because you don't see them, they're not big pots, your brain doesn't remember them particularly well, but all of a sudden at the end of a session you're down half a buy-in, 3/4 of a buy-in, you're like, where the heck did that money go? Oftentimes this is exactly where it went. If you're not really sure where to start when it comes to crafting your pre-flop ranges, I would definitely suggest looking at the GTO ranges app from Red Chip Poker. And while the GTO ranges in there are great, the exploitative ranges for live cash are definitely where you want to be looking at. They are handcrafted for exactly these types of games, with the kind of rake you're looking at, with the kind of players that you're playing against, in the kind of just general live cash game environment. Definitely make sure to check these out. If you're looking for the ranges, I would definitely suggest using in these pre-flop environments. Truth number 3, the rake is high in live cash games. Now, I don't want to go into the nitty gritty here because there are a ton of different variables, and rooms rake very differently, not just across the US, but just across the world. I mean, someone was in the Discord the other day and mentioned that the room that they play in has a €20 cap. That is huge. So in most of the rooms that I've played at, there tend to be kind of 2 components to the rake. One is the normal max rake, and then the other is the promotion. So if you see me talk about something like a 5+1 rake, what this means is it's $1 being taken for some sort of promotion, be it a bad beat jackpot, a high hand promotion, something like that. And then the 5 means what is the max rake normally. Now in live cash, it tends to get raked pretty darn hard, pretty darn quickly. So it's not uncommon to find, say, a $5 max rake with a 10% take, which means that at every single $10, they're going to take $1 out until you get that maximum of 5, which means that in a $50 pot, the rake is maxed, and then right that moment, nothing extra is going to get taken. Even if that pot balloons to a $20,000 pot, it's still going to get taken at $5, plus of course that 1 for whatever promotion they're currently running in the room. So that's kind of typical rake that you're going to find. Now in terms of raw dollars per hour coming off the table, it's a little bit brutal. Somewhere between $70 to $100 per hour is typically coming off of every live cash game table. But if you look at it in terms of big blinds, let's just say you're playing 1-2 and you're playing with a 5+1 rake structure, that's what, $6 being taken off max in a hand, which is 3 big blinds. Well, compare that to something like GG poker, and that's actually much lower for pretty much every single level, especially when you're looking at comparative levels. But with all that said, rake is simply the price of doing business, and if you want to play, especially when you don't have very many room options, which most players simply don't have since there aren't a tremendous amount of live poker rooms even in the US, it's kind of one of those, alright, gotta eat it, gotta pay it, and whatever, just do your best work around it. But I would highly suggest understanding what the rake structure is in your game, understand if there's a no flop, no drop kind of thing, or if there are other parameters at play. Definitely make sure to figure it out earlier so that way you're not blindsided later and you're like, where the heck is a lot of my win rate? Yeah, make sure it's not ending up totally in the rake trap. Truth number 4, live cash games are still super beatable. Even with everything we've already discussed, talking about lower volume, talking about not so great rake, talking about games where you have to play a little bit tighter, that still leaves a lot of opportunity for a very healthy win rate. And a lot of that derives from the fact that your opponent simply didn't drive or spend the time to get to the card room in order to fold most of the time. Even live cash game players who you think are pretty darn tight would actually look pretty darn loose if you took that same VPIP and took it over to an online cash game. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about actual win rate potential in these games. And while it's debatable and there's certainly a lot of factors at play, it's not uncommon for a really good win rate to be somewhere around 10 big blinds per hour. So that means like $20 an hour playing 1-2. And while that's probably not enough to justify quitting your day job, that's a pretty darn respectable hourly for a hobby nonetheless. And I know, someone's gonna post in comments, oh, I know someone who's making $35 an hour playing 1-2. Cool. I'm glad they made $35 an hour playing 1-2 for a month. And if you want a fun little exercise, go compare BB per 100 from everything we just talked about so far for live players versus online players, and you'll see what I mean. And even though yes, you're getting far fewer hands when you're playing live, and obviously there's no multi-tabling opportunities, still, that's a pretty nice BB per 100. And of course, if you're going to play this game very seriously, you really care about the hourly win rate, but still something nice to keep in mind. And if the idea of having a profitable hobby to the tune of $20 an hour makes you pretty darn happy and looks a lot better compared to something like golf, give this video a thumbs up. Truth number 5. Tells exist, but a solid strategy still reigns supreme. So as much as I talk about strategy, tells certainly exist. And honestly, this can make live play way more interesting than online when you can watch a player the entire time making every single decision that they make. However, you have to keep in mind that people do random things for random reasons, and it can be very difficult to nail down a specific tell profile on a player, especially if you don't play with them regularly. So I suggest thinking about tells as an additional layer of information, as an indicator of variables within the overall problem you're solving for. Players can look uncomfortable for any number of reasons, and they can shake simply because it's cold, and honestly, most card rooms are incredibly cold. Make sure to bring a sweater. Most of us don't wear hoodies because we're trying to look cool, simply because it is cold as hell in a live poker room. So if people can shake for a random reason, twitch for a random reason, anything, basing your entire strategy simply on tells is ill-advised at best. And the 6th truth is that live results can be brutal in the short term. So keep in mind that the smallest live game you're normally going to be able to find is going to be something like 1-2, which is a lot bigger than playing something like 5 cent, 10 cent online. So because of that, monetary swings can definitely get quite hefty very quickly. And given the lower effective stack depth, given the overall variance, given all these different factors, it's not uncommon to have something like a negative 1K session when you're playing just 1-2. I mean, heck, I'm a winning player and even I experienced one of those in my vlog recently. And given the small amount of volumes and you're playing so few hands per hour, you can't multi-table, you're really probably not going to put in that much volume. Even over a month, if you play a ton, you're not seeing that many hands. It can be very difficult to discern where any wins or losses are actually coming from at the end of the day. So because of that, be a diligent note taker. Make sure you're playing within your means, use good bankroll management, and make sure to focus on making good decisions and focusing less on just pure results at the end of the day. The results will stack up over time, but in the short term especially, it's going to be very hard to just look at just results. So make sure you're looking at the decisions you're making. That's going to be the key pivotal point. And if you're looking for help on how to make better decisions at the table, I would highly suggest checking out Core from Red Chip Poker if you haven't already. This is the ultimate A to Z poker course, takes everything you need to know, puts it in a very clear syllabus with bite-sized lessons that you can pick up, start, do a couple per day, and honestly, you're going to start building your win rate and really understanding where your edges are coming from quite quickly. Core is just $5 per week, so it's perfect for any size bankroll. It also includes all of the exploitative ranges that I mentioned earlier in this video, and also includes a complete live course that is perfect for 1-2 and 2-5 players. This is definitely something you want to check out. Again, redchippoker.com/core to get started. Enroll today, and I can't wait to see you in there. And as we're wrapping up, are there any truths that you wish I would have added to this list, or you want me to go more in depth on? Leave a comment down below. I'd really love to see what you'd add to this list, or what you want to see more of in future videos. As always, thank you so much for hanging out today. I look forward to seeing you back in a future video. In the meantime, good luck out there, and happy grinding.